Good evening, everybody from New York. This is Jay Tahoe's Fabulous Podcast. And we almost didn't get to start on time at Resquake's comment. Okay. We almost didn't start on time today because I took the train home from work today. And anyone who knows anything pretty much about New York infrastructure knows that usually makes things run a little behind schedule. So, I wanted to start off tonight's stream with an apology. I know it's been a while. We haven't done a stream in a fairly decent amount of time, and I just wanted to say that life has been pretty busy lately, guys. So bear with me. We're gonna continue doing streams. We're gonna address the topics as they come. It's just it's been hard to have that work-life balance and find time to do streams and even to do the research before doing the streams. I feel like I'm kind of running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I did my reading on the train home today to do this stream. So if things seem a little short-handed, that's why. I see Maramy Jeeks on backstage. Maramy Jeeks, we are going to do guests, but let's get through the content, and then we'll go to guests during the second half of the show. So at this time, I guess you can hang out back there, but we're going to get to guests a little later on. All right. So I'm here tonight. I've got with me my girlfriend, Mary. Good evening.
Good evening. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good. About 20 feet away from you, so we're good there.
Good. So you're socially distancing then?
Yeah, we practice social distancing even in our own place.
Yes, as per King Cuomo.
I'm sorry that Dan couldn't make it this evening. It's me. It's your prince. Just here to make sure that you apply to all social distancing measures.
Yeah, his excellency, Dan the Manyo is with us tonight. Dan, how's it going, man?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Joining you from my clandestine location this evening in case his fine emperor steps in and shuts this whole thing down. I don't know how the two of you could be so foolish to be within 20 feet of each other. It'd be very easy, to take you out.
Yeah, well, we don't want to get the Rona, especially since I was in New York City earlier today. So
you weren't amongst any of those communities, those red zones, were you?
Well, I was in the Upper East Side, so I'm not sure if that's one of them.
Oof, I'm gonna have to check that on my map.
So, all right. So I wanted to introduce the topic of tonight's show, which is lockdowns. Are they constitutional? So in a couple of states, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Michigan, businesses have been ordered being closed by the governor. Curfews have been imposed. Shelter-in-place orders have been put out. We've all seen in the news that some people think it's a great idea, while others were quite upset, to say the least. So I wanted to kind of address that tonight. And I think like the key, what I really want to, we are going to, I guess, go into, should we be doing lockdowns? Should we be closing things early? Should we be limiting the amount of people per space? But I want to more so focus on, I really don't want to get away from the topic of, are the people ordering this, are they within their legal right to do so? I mean, I don't think any of us are barred attorneys here, but this one just really seems like a really gray area, right?
Yeah, and this is a particularly gray area because if you think about it, this is something that has not been experienced really since something like the 1918 global flu pandemic. To quote Bill Gates, this is our 100-year threat. So admittedly, by most public elected officials, health officials, and typically experts on the matter, they're taking a stab at this. We don't really know what's working until we're there. So, I mean, to your point, Jay, is this constitutional? Are they within bounds to actually assign these measures and restrictions amongst the public? But nobody really knows if they're effective and for what greater good.
Right. And yet, what I find interesting, though, and again, this isn't to attack the left or anything, but as we know, we do on this show, I do tend to lean a little bit more to the right. Mary Mijik says, "Locked up, they won't let me out." Ara Marjadavra, ladies and gentlemen. And Joey Cuomo wants to join this show too. Hey guys, everybody who's trying to join the show, we're gonna have guests in probably about half an hour, so sit tight and we will get you guys on. I know Marami Jeeks requested to come on first, so Marami Jeeks is gonna be first, but we will get to guests. So let's just read out some comments. If lockdowns mean more podcasts then they're all within legal reason. I would say, Lloyd, learn some grammar, bro. But yeah, thanks. Rez Quake, your mom is hot. Thank you, mom. You're being complimented. I know she is watching this, so yeah. And RMR just laughing as usual. But so what we were saying is, so the lockdowns were in place. A lot of businesses actually ended up folding due to being told to shut down. Many people were without jobs. But as someone on the right looking at this, what I find a little hypocritical is, okay, well then George Floyd died, and we had protests, which you have your First Amendment right to assemble. However, the lockdown orders seem to violate that First Amendment right to assemble. But then all of a sudden, when you had thousands and thousands of if not a million people in the streets, all of a sudden the shelter in place and lockdown orders seem to be thrown to the wayside. What's everybody's thoughts on that?
Well, that's the real issue, is that these quarantine measures and these restrictions are being applied in a way that many people feel is arbitrary. Whereas you said, people are allowed to protest, and people are allowed to shop at Costco and Walmart and pack into these crowded spaces. But they're seemingly not allowed to attend religious masses or even hold gatherings, small gatherings, inside or outside their own private residences.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is well, I guess you could argue the point that, okay, it's good to to limit the amount of people within a certain place. It's good to I get it. I get why we're closing the businesses early, if not indefinitely, because it's the number of people in place. But you can also make that argument. If I want to go skydiving, right? I know that there's risks associated with that, but I'm within my legal right to do it. You can also make the case that, if you want to go to a bar, you're also that's your own risk. I mean, if you want to shelter in place, you can shelter in place too. But does your governor have the right to tell you that you can't go to a bar after 10 o'clock? That's
not only that, but what does that do in terms of curtailing the spread of the virus? Is the virus only spreadable after 10 p.m. At a bar or restaurant, or is this is it just an arbitrary restriction? And the real issue I personally take with this is that I point out time and time again that the government cannot generate wealth. And so we talk about, amongst all of this, that many states and local municipalities are going deeper and deeper and deeper into a deficit that's going to eventually catch up with the citizens in the term of more and more taxes. That are we digging ourselves deeper into a hole that we're not going to economically recover from for years to come, let alone the businesses, as you said, that have closed, that have shuttered, that have been lost due to this virus and the panic and the quarantine measures. But is this really a far bigger and more serious situation? And not only that, but the loss of life of individuals. Numerous news outlets are reporting now about more and more cases of teen depression, and really, frankly, depression amongst many people that are undergoing this quarantine. What are the effects on people in terms of a mental health standpoint as well?
Yeah, and that's a good point too about these other side effects. I did want to call this out. So Lloyd is saying, what other options are there? And I mean, yeah, obviously it's wear a mask.
Excellent question.
It's social distance. But I mean, what difference does it make if I go to a bar at 9 o'clock or if I go to a bar at after 10 o'clock? Is it at that point? Is it really about stopping the spread of the virus, or is it about compliance? Is it about following the orders of his excellency, King Andrew Cuomo, king of all the land?
Well, and I'm going to challenge you on that, Jay. If not Andrew Cuomo to make the decision, let's talk about the fact that currently his decision and his restrictions upon religious gatherings is currently being taken to the Supreme Court. And this is really a turning point because of the recent appointment of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, where this case could actually end up. Previously, it was determined that the rules set in place by the individual state governors in California, Nevada, and other states, that they were upheld by the Supreme Court, because the general feeling is who is more fit to make the decision than the elected officials for that state, the representatives for that state. Is the Supreme Court, our judiciary, unelected officials, powers that be, are they more fit to make the decision? And what type of loss of human life could result if the Supreme Court declares that that it is unconstitutional that people can go about what they're doing?
I don't know why we're not consulting health professionals in this. We have government officials, but what do they actually know about safety rules and regulations? How about you get an infectious disease doctor on your staff and start asking them what they think? We pay enough money in tax dollars. I'm sure they could afford to add a doctor to the payroll.
I mean, we've got Fauci.
Not really, because Trump was like, bye-bye, Fauci.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see Fauci be promoted to customer within the next 60 days. I keep trying to bring in.
I think you have an excellent point, though. I think that's what's missing. Is this is kind of a game of hot potato between elected officials and Supreme Court justices. Nobody wants to make the decision on what the right thing to do is, but to a point, it almost feels like we're ignoring the science.
Well, I think that they're, because Cuomo claims that he flattened the curve the first time around, but we have what, New York now?
Is that with the nursing homes?
I believe, yeah, because he flattened the curve by killing all the vulnerable, like that meme we saw yesterday. But you and I were looking at the index earlier. The infection rate per 100,000 in New York is now at 26. So I guess that's 26 out of every 100,000 is not terrible. So I mean, I guess we'll say it semi worked, but we also, I believe, we're trending higher.
Well, and what's interesting is moving forward, they're actually measuring the COVID infection rates on a micro level, which actually I'm supportive of. Part of Cuomo's news briefing today was of the 159,852 tests reported yesterday, 5,088 were positive. That's 3.18% total. Total hospitalizations are at 2,124. It's a little less than half of the total reported cases in just yesterday. Sadly, there were 29 COVID fatalities yesterday. But the way that New York is looking at this now, which I think is maybe we're looking at it a little bit too late in terms of quarantine measures, but the test rate positivity in focus areas under New York's microcluster strategy is 4.89%. And the statewide positivity rate, excluding the focus areas, is about 2.82%. So if you really look at that for what it's worth, testing down to the neighborhood, testing down to a zip code level, being able to understand where these hot spots are, perhaps maybe we shouldn't be applying arbitrary lockdowns on every single business that operates in the state of New York. Perhaps we shouldn't be applying lockdowns to houses of worship and educational institutions, but perhaps we should be applying complete lockdowns to these areas that are complete hotspots, that are red spots on the map. Why do we not lock those people down and put them into a week-long or 2-week-long quarantine?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good point, too. I was actually going to ask you, so now that we have better data to determine where the hotspots are, so that would be your course of action then, is to do lockdown. But isn't that kind of how it how Cuomo was doing it? And I don't like to credit Cuomo with anything, okay? I mean, Cuomo, when I go to the range, okay, he's on my targets. I throw darts at the guy's face, but I mean,
where are you aiming? You're not aiming at his gorgeous nipples, are you?
No. Oh, heavens no.
Oh, heavens no.
Yeah.
But yes, I think, early on, that was what was proposed, was that we were going to
not to cut you off, but if you recall, they had to achieve certain COVID numbers to be allowed to open back certain things. So once it fell below a certain infection rate,
right, then
you could open up your restaurants, but with outside dining only. And then when it fell below another certain rate, then you could have gyms back open, but only with 33% capacity and so forth. So that's kind of the model that they were following. Like Suffolk County was one, the city was one, if you recall. There were
right, but why apply the restrictions on a broad sweeping basis to certain businesses and not others? Frankly, let's just say, I'm looking at the numbers specifically. I'm looking at this. Brooklyn obviously is a hot zone, although Brooklyn's actually going down, is trending downwards.
Brooklyn was a hot zone during the first wave, though.
Westchester is a consistent hot zone. And even up in central New York, Onondaga County is a hot zone. They're trending at 7 to 8% positive COVID cases. Why, instead of shutting down certain sectors of businesses and educational institutions and religious institutions at, as you said, at a threshold, we decide when we turn things on and turn things off? Why not lock down those individual counties, those hot zones, and say, hey, you have 48 hours to gather whatever supplies you need for the next 2 weeks. And after that, we're going into a mandatory quarantine pending any emergency situation.
Yeah, I mean,
Close all businesses, close all government offices, close everything in that county.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a terrible idea. And to
I mean, if we're going to trample constitutional rights, why not do it the right way?
yeah, we might as well, make some progress with it. Yeah, but I think to Lloyd's point, that answers your question. I don't know, Mary, how do you feel about that?
I mean, that's really an approach of go big or go home. If we're going to go on lockdown, we're going to shut the whole county down. I think people would effing rage over that if you told them they couldn't go out for 2 weeks, they couldn't get, to the DMV, they couldn't do grocery shopping. I think people would absolutely rage.
Yeah,
And how do you enforce that? Especially in Suffolk County, we don't have a big police force.
Is it even a matter? Is it even a matter of enforcing it, or is it one of those things where if the government offices are closed and the businesses are closed, and everything is closed, that people will generally stay home?
I don't think you're going to get people to stay home.
You're not getting.
We couldn't get people to stay home during the first wave of quarantine.
But the
I
stores
highly doubt it's going to happen the second wave.
But
by the way, guys, today is the COVID-19 virus's birthday. The first
Happy
case.
birthday, COVID! All right,
the first case was November 2019. So, happy birthday, COVID!
Happy Wuhan Day.
Yeah, I also wanted to take a moment. I know we were supposed to have Joey Kumo as a guest since the beginning of the show, but he had a few technical difficulties. So, Joey, are you with us? Ooh, your audio is terrible. Hey, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and mute you until we get that figured out. All right, he's yeah, his audio is
on the fritz.
Is not working. So I would say try go out, come back in, maybe reset your Wi-Fi because that is not let's try one more time. But okay, he dropped. Anyway, moving along. Lloyd says, I think if you want to do that, you need to be able to test a lot more frequently. What about asymptomatic carriers? I mean, he's got a point because you are going to have people who aren't symptomatic and just don't get tested in the first place.
Well, if you put an entire county or district on lockdown, I think that's an excellent incentive for more people to get tested, because if your overall positivity rate declines, then that's the quicker you come off of lockdown.
Well, now here's my question. What I can see happening in a scenario like that is, you tell people they have 48 hours to gather up all the supplies they need, and in typical New Yorker fashion, they go ahead and do just the opposite of that and wait until the last minute until they're supposed to be locked down, and then all of a sudden, it's, hey, you're violating my constitutional rights. I should be allowed to go to the store and buy Pop-Tarts. I'll tell you right now, anybody who tells me I'm not allowed to go buy Pop-Tarts, I'm coming out swinging.
This is the hot button issue. Clearly, this is why you had this stream in the first place. It's all about your constitutional right to buy Pop-Tarts.
In the 2 years that we've been dating, I've never once seen you purchase or eat a Pop-Tart. Just for the record.
I think I bought one at the airport one time. Okay, goldfish. I like goldfish.
Yeah, that's a more accurate statement.
Right. So if Cuomo tells me I can't buy goldfish, I'm going to punch him right in his big fat face. All right.
In the kisser.
Yep. Right in his nipple ring. Joey Kumo, are you there?
Can everybody hear me?
Now your volume is really low. Try turning your audio up.
Okay.
Hello?
1 sec.
Hey, Joey, have you fixed your mic?
Can you hear me better now?
No, you're coming in really low. You guys can't hear him, right?
No, he's very low in volume. Though you were fading in and out earlier during the stream, Jay, but he's permanently down.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna upward and onward.
Let me get to this.
All right. Once when you think it's fixed, just drop in the private chat, and we'll try again. But for now, upward and onward, as they say. So Dan, had you read any of that article I sent you earlier about in Michigan, where it did go to the Supreme Court, and it looks as if the Supreme Court had ruled that the governor did not have the right to make that call without the approval of state legislature.
No, I did not see that. I did not see that case, and that's it's an interesting judgment. So how do they move forward from that?
So it looks like everything had to be opened back up there, because it also came down to, as you said, is the choosing of one business or groups of others based on quote unquote essentiality, or whatever that means, truly neutral? Are these decisions supported by scientific facts, or are 50 parishioners wearing masks and gloves sitting 10 feet apart in church that holds 500 really more dangerous to the general health and the welfare of the public than 10 people lined up in a small gas station store? It's like who's making the determination of what's essential and what's not.
Well, and that returns to my point is the problem is that the restrictions are very arbitrary, and I think that although this has been very damaging for many businesses, there is still a little bit of protectionism for certain businesses and government organizations. That's why we're not doing a complete and total shutdown. This is the clear difference between previous pandemics like the 1918 influenza epidemic and the COVID pandemic, is that we're not actually, these are not actual quarantines.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Everybody was still. You know what I missed was a few months ago when you could drive to New York City and there was nobody on the road, and I could get to New York City in 40 minutes flat from Suffolk County. But it wasn't a true
progress. Sometimes comes at the cost of a pandemic, huh?
Yeah. Can we get? How about you? Y'all got any more of them pandemics?
Ask Bill Gates.
But my point is, it wasn't a true quarantine because there were still people out. I'm still out there. I can still get it. I can still spread it to you, my friends, to Mary, my entire family, her entire family. So it's not a quarantine.
At my detriment, I mean, what I do is pretty important, but I don't consider what I do to be essential. So again, how are these restrictions being applied? They're really not being applied with much sense or science.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, my job, and I'm not going to dox myself and say what I do, but it was deemed essential. So
I like some of the questions, by the way, Jay, that are coming in the chat.
Yeah, let's read these out, and then Joey Kumo says he's good, so we'll try to come back to him. So let's see here. Let's read some of these comments. The positive rate is based on who went to get the test, right? So to label districts safe or not safe could be I think he meant to say easily very skewed.
Yeah. Yes. And then the next one, follow up.
Is it constitutional to mandate everyone gets tested? I don't think so. Because right now you can't mandate that everybody gets vaccinated. I mean, we had a guy come on the show a couple of streams ago and for an hour tell us, why vaccination is wrong and it, spikes autism rates. So I don't think you can force anybody to take any type of medical test.
No, by constitutional definition, to use a measure of force to actually make somebody get tested or take the vaccine. No, that's really, it's against the basic tenets of the Constitution. But again, this is why I think we need to have an actual local shutdown, area by area, shut down the hotspots, because at least there's some sort of incentive for those areas to go get tested, or maybe even go get vaccinated to flatten the curve, so to speak. You can't make them, you can't actually mandate that everybody in that area gets tested or vaccinated. But if there's great enough incentive to their quality of life, then they're going to do it.
But you know what I don't get, and I want to just make this point, and then we're going to see if Joey's mic is behaving properly. Is that okay? There's some states that you can't go to, or and let's say you one of those states that you must quarantine for 14 days is a state on your border. I mean, states are just lines on a map at the end of the day. I used to drive to New Jersey multiple times a week. I don't think, you know what I mean?
Well,
what's that going to do? Telling me if I've been to New Jersey that I have to stay home for 14 days now. What does that do?
You pose another constitutional conundrum in that the right to travel is one of our constitutional rights, and to actually tell somebody that they have to quarantine or that they can't travel to between specific states is a breach of constitutional rights in itself.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. There's really, I guess there's really no right answer here, but it just seems like, I guess because you're gonna get the same two arguments. It's gonna boil down to the same two arguments. The left is gonna tell you, well, the government in emergencies does have the authority to do that because it's for the greater good. It's to it's to stop the spread of a dangerous virus. It's to save lives. Okay. Yep. And you have a point. And the right is going to tell you the Constitution's the Constitution. You have that right to assemble, and the government, as long as your assembly is orderly, the government can't say otherwise, and they're violating your rights. And also, they're shutting down businesses that they have no business shutting down, and they're destroying people's livelihoods. But I also pose this question too. How many people are going to die because they no longer have health insurance because they lost their job and can't get another one, and they're towards the more elderly end of the spectrum, and now they've lost their health insurance, and that leads to them not being able to afford medical care, or they go into crippling debt, which, as you said, we've seen a lot of depression rates spiking. Is that going to lead to ultimately more deaths as well too? So a question to think about. Let's try again with hey, Joey Kumo. Let's see if we can hear you now.
Okay, can you hear me? Is
Yeah,
the
Mike.
It's a little bit. Yeah,
We can hear you.
We can hear you. Got a little bit of an echo, but we can hear you now.
A little bit of an echo. Okay. Let's see. I got the echo cancellation
Nothing
on.
to really worry about, though.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pure. We can hear you. We can hear you. So
Okay.
Do you want to introduce yourself and give your thoughts on what
Sure.
we talked about so far?
Sure. Being a native New Yorker on the South Shore, I don't know if things are different for the people on the North Shore of Long Island, but I can tell you down here, our governor has no allies. It's the businesses, people. We're all fed up, and I really think at some point this island's going to secede from New York and be its own territory, because politically we are so far from the core of New York.
No, I mean, yeah, I do think that's true that we do differ from the rest of the state politically. However, the us seceding from the state, I think, I don't know how realistic that is. I mean, for taxation purposes and everything, I don't think the rest of New York would really ever let that happen, to be honest.
we could have a whole additional stream on some of the ideas ideas represented there. And I think one of the most practical ones is actually a 3-state solution, where you take
Upstate, downstate, and midstate.
Yeah, exactly. And really, what you're referring to, and realistically, upstate and Long Island have far more similar political and cultural views than the New York metropolitan area. And the New York metropolitan area could certainly sustain itself as a state. The question is what would be the effects of breaking off the other two parts? Again, a topic probably for a whole entire another stream.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, we can make a whole stream on that. I mean, Long Island is physically larger than Rhode Island, and it has larger populations than many states. I think if Long Island was its own state, it would be like 14th highest population nationally.
Yeah. That sounds right. And it would also, not to go off on a tangent, but it would also solve some of the electoral issues that are posed by some of the skewed effects of the way New York is set up now.
Just for representation purposes, overall.
Surely.
Yeah, but then comes down to the questions like how many seats in the House would we get?
Now,
all kinds of
Joey Cuomo,
votes will we get?
My question for you is, why do you feel that people on the South Shore of Long Island that are fed up with Cuomo, that he has no allies in this fight? What would he need to do for people to support him through this pandemic? What are the right things to do?
He would need to be less. He would need to be less seen. I think he's overexposed. He's overexposing himself, and in that he's not being very. What do I want to say? He's been pandering a lot this past year to his party, where before I would say he was more equally distributed amongst ideals. Now you can clearly say who he's for and who he's against.
Well, to make the famous quote, "Never waste a good crisis." Amongst all of this, Andrew Cuomo is set in January to become the highest paid U.S. governor. His salary of $225,000 is being increased $25,000 to $250K. And amongst all of this, he also has a book deal in the works as well.
Well, yeah, actually, he is going to be at the book review in Huntington, I believe, later on this month, signing his new book.
Boy, oh boy. Love to shake his hand.
I know. It's just been interesting to see how he's done. For example, these vents that movie theaters need in order to operate, these hundreds of thousands of dollars of ventilation systems. They need to open their doors, yet they're opening up state schools without them. No problem. Nobody's saying boo. I think that's very hypocritical.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're going to have, independent businesses required to have, health and safety standards that are completely separate from your own state municipalities, I just don't see how that equates.
So Joey, I mean, I brought up, which is very unlike me, I brought up a very somewhat totalitarian stance of, if you're going to shut things down, shut entire hotspots down.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts? Do you have any other solutions, any other thoughts of how we can get through this pandemic? What are the reasonable ways to deal with this?
Honestly, the reasonable way to deal with this is to continue on as life goes. We're all aware of what we need to do, what we should do. If people are out there and they choose not to do that, that is their personal choice. And if they happen to suffer the consequences of that, that is of their own volition. But to say that we haven't put out the knowledge of why and the reasoning behind what we're doing, if you choose, or believe a different way, then I feel you should be allowed to believe your way and go on as you are. But,
I agree with you very much on that. Yeah. Very libertarian standpoint.
I am as libertarian as they come.
I try not to give myself away, but I there's a great deal of.
I voted for Joe Jorgensen. Just throwing it out there.
Is it true if the third party gets 5% of the vote, they're allowed to be in the debates?
I believe so. Yeah, I forget.
Yeah. And unfortunately, New York State, Albany passed during the Budget Act. I believe that actually the third party may lose their ballot access because if we do not attain 2% of the vote in the last election.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So it's a slippery slope. It goes both ways, but obviously it's a game they play.
It is. It is. And honestly, if you think about it, after this, because we already saw what one side did handle this pandemic. Now we're going to see what the other side's going to do to handle this pandemic. If this gets botched during this presidency, I'm really curious to see how many people would say, you know what, nobody knew what to do. Left didn't know, right didn't know. Let's find another idea. Let's ask somebody else. Let's bring somebody else to the table.
I think many of us are waiting for just that moment, and not even, not in a violent way, but in definitely certainly certainly a revolutionary way.
Absolutely.
These are the times that catalyze true change. Our nation's been through difficult times like this before, and out of them have become very unique results. I don't think the two-party system stands to last much longer, considering the way that, frankly, there has been no bipartisan solution. There has been no partisan solution.
Well, I'm gonna challenge you on that because I think that Americans are more divided politically than they've ever been. Probably the last time we were this divided was the American Civil War. I mean, these election results were pretty, in some states, I mean, it was down to the wire. I think Georgia was decided by less than 1%. I mean, you saw that in a couple of states. So it was like, I get it. Biden won some states by slim popular vote margins, which caused him, it makes the electoral vote look like a blowout. But, a difference of 5 million votes out of 360 million people is pretty small. So that actually, I would say we're more politically divided than ever. And while people should, I think the opinion should be wake up and be like, this two-party system just doesn't work at all. And, it's really meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But, I guess we're not really good luck trying to convince a Trumper. Oh my God, those Trumpers, they're coping so hard right now. We saw people, out with we're driving around, people like, we love Donald Trump. I'm like, regardless of whether you think it's fraud or not, you need to get over it. It's over.
I would like to take your point though, Jay. Mm-hmm. To your point, and really following up on what Joey's saying, the last time we had a major political change where the Whig Party folded into the Republican Party, that was 5 years before the start of the Civil War. So I think this is, as you said, people are more divided than ever. I think it's a time that's ripe for new ideas and change.
It is, but I mean,
frankly, it's the only way out of conflict.
It is, but I mean, those people who are actually willing to be bipartisan and meet in the middle, like the Andrew Yangs, the Joe Jorgensens, they just get crushed, politically. So
I think they really, yeah.
No, make your point.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that now's the time to really lie low and really see what happens, and then use whatever happens as a catalyst. for whatever change may or may not need to be made. Just lay low, let whatever this administration is going to do, and see if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't,
and
look for
beyond
new
all
ideas.
that, though, continue to talk amongst yourselves and
Exactly.
educate others about what their options are and what their rights are.
To engage with someone who is decisive, who just wants to argue or call you names. There's no need to get, that aggressive or that violent. Those people 9 times out of 10 do themselves in on their own, and enough of them get together and enough of people see that. See, that's the biggest problem. You got to get that seen. And the way the news outlets have been, you're not going to be seeing any of that.
Jay, I think you need to go over to the comments.
Oh, the Kanye party.
Get ready, yeah.
2024. Yeah, I don't know. That was they had a hard time breaking it to him. He was really heartbroken. That honestly was one of the saddest things to see in all of 2020 was Kanye's be let down. He did not win the election. All right, well, we've been yammering on for 45 minutes here, so why don't we go to some guests? I know Meremy Jeeks specifically requested he wanted to come on first. So, Meremy Jeeks, are you ready? He's there. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Let's see here. All right, Meremy Jeeks, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, thanks for letting me on first. My gym, you have to make an appointment ahead of time. There's a corona restriction. So yeah, thanks for letting me on first so I can get on. Well, anyway, I just want to say that I think the same people who were behind this pandemic have put a lot of men into lockdown since puberty.
Meremy, you're cutting out really bad. Can you fix your mic? You're cutting out pretty bad there.
Yeah. How's it better now? No.
Yeah, no, that's a little more clear. And the fact that you have to make an appointment to get into your gym. So tell us, are the lockdowns constant? Are the lockdowns constant?
You caught that, right? All right.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say that I don't think that we're in a real lockdown right now. Floyds are still going to Chad. Let's not. Parties are still happening. I think what this is it's a good way to kind of mask a lot of bars and restaurants going out of business because they've been going downhill for a while.
So you think this is a way to mask an economic correction that's been long overdue?
To shift blame?
I think yes. Because I think I've been in lockdown for a while. A lot of men have been in lockdown for a while. Doing anything for me. Yeah, I think it's just to shift blame to say, oh, it's Corona did it. Corona put these bars out of business. Corona put these restaurants out of business. But they've been going downhill for a long time because society living is very.
Because of what you cut out there.
Geez, that doesn't even make sense. How is it? Is it okay?
Why? Yeah. What? So wait. So why are the bars and restaurants going out of business?
Society's very gynocentric, and a lot of guys go to restaurants on dates, and they can't get them anymore.
Well, I don't know. I don't think restaurants rely on dates to pay the bills, though. When you go out to restaurants, you see families. You see a lot of families going out to eat. I don't know.
Exactly, families, and people are not really having families anymore nowadays. The fertility rate's way down. Less people are having kids. There's less families. Let's say Applebee's, Chili's. Do you guys have it?
Yeah, we have all that over here.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of like a family type place, right?
Yeah.
So, Maramy
But
Jeeks, what do you think the
when
logical
people are
conclusion of this is if it continues to trend this way?
the conclusion of what?
You're saying that this is, that the decline is being blamed on coronavirus, but I mean, where is this going, from here?
I feel like society's just gotten worse. Ever since the 20th century, society's just been getting worse and worse.
Maramy, one question. When was the last time that you were on a date?
You're not familiar, are you? Jay. Jay, you want to take this?
The answer to that one would be never.
Yeah, man. I had no chance. The way society is now, like, it's over for a lot of guys, that includes me.
Why do you think that is?
I think a certain group, I'm not going to say who, YouTube, is very, very, very gynocentric. And they control the world, and they, I don't know why they're so gynocentric. I think it's just
You can say reptilians, it's okay.
What they are. Reptilians, yeah, we'll call them that. Reptilians. I think they're a very gynocentric tribe, and I think fundamentally they hate men. Honestly, like, I think that's it. I don't know what their ultimate goal is here. Maybe it's population, just hate men, but
I don't want to get too far off topic here, guys.
Okay.
I mean, we can talk about black pill stuff another time.
I did want to
ask you something,
I just think
though.
it kind of relates to the way you walk on. Yeah, sure.
Let me just to bring us back on topic here. In your opinion, are the lockdowns, are they constitutional? Have any rights been infringed upon?
Yes. Rights
Okay,
have been infringed upon. I don't think they're constitutional. Especially considering that this thing kills, like, fat people and old people. I don't know. It kills people who are already dying, for a lack of a better word. Like, at a fucking nursing home. I mean,
right. I mean,
a lot of guys nowadays aren't even gonna live that long.
Right. Well, I mean, that was a point that was being raised in the beginning, is that, you can, if you're not well, if you're not in good health, I mean, yes, you can die from the flu. At the end of the day, we do know that the fatality rate of coronavirus is about 3%. So every 3 in 100 are likely going to die from coronavirus. But it's like, with those 3 in 100, if 3 in 100 people got the regular flu, would they have died anyway? I mean, that's another good point. What
is the statistic of flu fatalities, Jay?
Let's
I think it's like one. It's lower than Corona, allegedly. I don't really know, though.
We're gonna have
lower than Corona. I mean, it's not that many people die from the flu.
We're gonna have a medical expert on next, so maybe they can enlighten us on what that is. But real quick,
yeah, sorry, I just took off topic a bit because I think it kind of relates to the lockdown. I think a lot of men have been living in lockdown for a while. And I don't think lockdown, the so-called lockdown we're right now, is really even a lockdown. I don't know. I haven't seen any police like enforce anything. It seems like a lot of public places are closed. There's still like private gatherings happening, and no one's really doing shit about that.
Right, and I mean, it's as we talked about. It's like during the protests and everything. There was, how are you going to enforce? How are you going to enforce that when you have a million people in the streets? What are you going to do? You know what I mean? Like, you have
Right.
even in a city.
Right.
New York City has the largest
Exactly.
police force in the country. New York has 38,000 police officers. Okay, and if you have a
Wow.
million people out in the streets, what are they going? What's 38,000 people, even if they have guns and batons, against a million people? I mean, how badly are you outnumbered?
Yeah, that's your point.
You're not enforcing
yeah, I don't
shit.
think this is a real lockdown anyway. At least not in the states I am. I don't know. Maybe it's a little different in New York, but I don't think it is from what you guys have been saying.
Maybe at the individual level,
Yeah, it's
but
not really a
businesses
lockdown.
do
It
get.
kind of seems like they're closing
But businesses.
They're just
But I'm
closing
saying those
businesses.
businesses
Not a
will
lockdown.
suffer. Those
Yes,
businesses
of
will
course.
suffer. I mean, movie theaters weren't going out of business. Even with Netflix and everything, I mean, you still go to the movie theater on a Friday night and it was packed, especially if it was like a, new release.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that those businesses
Yeah.
were definitely being hurt. And I'm not here to advocate for movie theaters and lobby for them. I'm just saying that, like, if you, let's say, there's a local mom and pop movie theater near us, Dan, Mary, Joey, you guys know which one I'm talking about. PJ, that guy has owned that movie theater since I was
You're not
a
talking
child.
about the one with the booths in the back.
Yeah, no, not that one. But the guy I'm talking about. He's owned that movie theater since I moved here 26 years ago. So I mean, that'd be really sad to see that guy, lose his livelihood because of all this.
Yeah. Also, I think this is kind of a thought that I had. They're closing restaurants, movie theaters, stuff like that. I think it's just to kind of further atomize people, like even more so.
I mean, I can see that. I can see that point of view. I just don't know if it's that conscious of an effort to do that, or if I really don't know what their motive is here. To be honest, I don't know if it's somebody like Cuomo just thinks, hey, I'm doing the right thing. If it's or if it's self-righteousness, or if it's just a power play, like how easily can I get people to comply? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a little more sinister. I think, look, I think this is being done to just further atomize people, closing down like public venues like that.
You're saying to separate
it's not a lot.
to separate the genders further.
Yes, and not only that, but just people in general, separate them further.
Yeah, I mean that would be a great way to do it. That would be a great way to do it. I don't know how I don't know what the end game there would be. I mean, I know First had talked about that on one stream, that the more itemized people are, you can sell more stuff. And if you're at Jeff Bezos, that's great, because now instead of selling one family table, you can sell us a single man and a single woman who have their own apartment, each their own table.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely part of it too. And yeah, I mean, like, look, women are never going to be alone, but men will be. So I think it just goes into more gynocentrism.
Mary, I'm curious, what do you think about that? Must have fallen asleep. All right, Mary Cheeks, do you have any final points you want to make? I do want to get to the next caller.
Incel lives matter.
Alrighty. Thank you for your call, and we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next person. So take care. All right. Okay, let's bring on the next case. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
All right, so I believe we now have a medical expert on the show. Is that correct?
Hardly an expert, but medical training, yes.
No, it's good to have you on the show again, Dad.
Same to you, J Tahoe.
All right, so I know you texted me a couple of things, and you know, to that point, it is hard to host a show. Pay attention to the YouTube comments. Make sure we're keeping the stream on check and read the text. So I do apologize, but I wanted to give you the floor so you can kind of take us through a couple of those points you were making.
Well, I tell you, if the virus were macroscopic and if it were visible, and you can imagine it like covering your body with leeches or maggots, I think pretty soon, pretty quick, everybody would be covered up from head to toe.
Hey, Dad, your mic was a little funky there.
I'm sorry.
Can you just repeat that point one more time?
If you could see the thing, you could see it on you or getting into your respiratory tract, I think people would take precautions. PDQ.
So you think you'd have a lot more people who were in favor of masks and lockdowns?
The lockdowns, that's a tough one. I mean, I liked the point earlier. I don't think the virus gets any more virulent after 10 p.m., but I think people do get drunker after 10 p.m. and tend to let their guards down.
Well, there's that saying, nothing good happens after midnight.
Oh, yes, that's very true. Except maybe you. I think you happened after midnight, but anyway, I digress. But yeah, I mean, places where you're going to be indoors in a closed space and be taking your mask off, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Right. But I'm saying, like, so I guess the topic of the show, right? And I know obviously you are you've had extensive, obviously, medical training. Maybe not so much legal training, but is Cuomo within his rights to do this? Can he legally tell people when they can and can't go to the bar?
Damn it, Jim! I'm a lawyer, not a doctor. I mean, a doctor, not a lawyer. Little Star Trek reference there. I think at the federal level, from my meager knowledge of the law, which basically consists of living in a law school dorm for 1 year at Penn and watching the paper chase 1,000 times, I don't think there's anything in the Constitution about it. But then again, you think when the Constitution was written in the late 1700s, the last pandemic had been the plague. So I think that was pretty far from these people in a new land and a new world, pretty far from their thinking. And, there's only been the 1917, 1918 flu. Since then,
Right. Well, we had right. Well, I think the argument is that the part of the Constitution that this violates is your right to assembly, and stating the number of people that you can have. They're saying that is an infraction on that, and as long as the assembly is orderly and not violent, not illegal. So is that
And the real infringement, Jay, is the infringement on gatherings of 10 or more persons inside or outside private residences, because that violates New York castle doctrine directly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's your private property. How can Cuomo tell you, that you can't, that Aunt Edna makes 11, so now you're getting fined?
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more there. But I think it's a stretch. Peaceable assembly obviously is right there. An article, whichever. The only way you could stretch that is to argue that perhaps potentially going out infected with the virus, that you are carrying a lethal weapon, in which case it becomes violent. But I'm not sure I buy that
No.
argument.
Well, I was
I
gonna
say-
say, what are
I
your
don't buy
chances of?
that.
So right. Well, I was gonna say the reason why I don't think that's a good argument is we know that the fatality rate of coronavirus is roughly 3%. I mean, what are your chances of dying in a car accident? I mean, I have I have a pretty high chance of running someone over, right? Of getting in a car accident and someone dying. So should we tell people don't drive anymore? Like it's I mean I get it. It's not maybe not to that extent, but I mean it's it's not a large percentage of people who actually die. So I don't think you could really prove that that's a deadly weapon.
So legality aside, I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on our way out of this pandemic, considering that New Yorkers for sure don't want to adhere to arbitrary lockdowns and quarantine restrictions, and it's probably quite unlikely that most people are going to take the vaccine when it comes out, so we'll never actually establish herd immunity. What is our way out of this?
Honest answer, damned if I know.
Yeah,
Well,
I figured that was a sticky question.
Well, we do have countries that have curtailed it, though. I mean, if you look at Taiwan and Vietnam, they've almost eradicated it entirely, and that's because the people there voluntarily, like they were wearing masks from the get-go. They were avoiding going outside unless absolutely necessary from get-go. And you look at Taiwan, right? It's right near China. I mean, it's so. It's like if you could get everybody to cooperate, I think that's how you do it. But the problem that we're having here is just as we talked about before, with us being so politically divided, I don't think you could get everybody to cooperate.
No way.
You don't think we could shut down on a municipal level, case by case, and just make Netflix free for everybody?
I still think you'd have too many people saying, well, it tramples my rights, so I'm not doing it.
Okay, free Netflix and Amazon Prime.
I mean, if it's free Netflix and okay, you're
My
adding
final
Amazon
one.
Prime now. All right, yeah, I guess I'll stay inside for 2 weeks. Yeah, all right, you got me. You got me. To quote a great man, fine, you got me.
To quote a very drunk man.
Yeah, a great and drunk.
So, Jay Tahoe, I wonder what Mrs. The next case thinks.
What?
Yeah. All right. So,
Spot.
the mom. What?
I can't even hear it now. We lost him.
You're roboting.
We lost him.
Lost your audio, buddy.
Ground control to Major J.
I don't know. I don't know enough of the science. Really. I do think that some of it can be.
Jay Tahoe, where are you? Anybody? Bueller?
I'd say we're all still here, but Jay has dropped.
We obviously just astounded him with our astute comments.
Seeing if we can fix things on the back end here.
We could sing the Jeopardy song.
Oh, we have a second Jay Tahoe joining the chat.
Yeah, I had to take out the. Can you guys hear me all right now? I know I
Yes.
froze up there.
Yeah, we're all clear.
Okay, so I think Mom, you were about to weigh in on what we discussed tonight. Is that correct?
I don't really have too much to say. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not something that I know, enough to have a compelling argument about anything on it. I do think, obviously something should be should be done, and I don't know. It's just, and I think Mary is right that you need to, have health people in on it, but I don't, I don't have a plan for it.
Well, I guess I would ask you. So, is Cuomo within his right to do what he's to impose a lockdown, whether regardless of what the motivation is? Is he within his right, and does it violate anybody's rights? Particularly your First Amendment right to assemble.
I don't really want to touch that. I mean, I do not find fault with him for trying to do something, because I don't know what's better, and he has to do something, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how right and how long that goes. You know what I'm saying? I mean, uh, I know I'm wildly unpopular here, and that I still like him, but I
Well,
mean, I think he's been honest, and I think he tries to do the right thing, which is, something we don't always see in government.
I mean, okay, but well, you can do things that end up being good for people, but it also violates their rights. I mean, if you were to ask if you were to ask a citizen in Venezuela about Hugo Chavez, they would have told you he was the man. I mean, he was basically a benevolent dictator, but still nonetheless a dictator, and stayed in office for way too long. So I mean, yeah, he did violate rights, but people would have their people would have told you he was a great guy.
Well, okay, so I don't think that the bar thing is a good whatever, because as your friend said, nobody. Why should why should there be more COVID running around after 10 o'clock at night? I mean, people will get less careful, but so I mean, where do you put what restriction? You do have to. I think you do have to put some, because we can't just let this run rampant. I mean we could, if everybody wore a mask and social distanced and did the right things, but since they're not, you just want to let everybody die from their own ignorance.
Well, here's the thing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't want to shelter, it's your right to shelter in place, right? You can
Hmm.
buy everything that you need for 2 weeks and stay home. But that's what I was saying before, right? Like I do have a right to go skydiving, regardless of how dangerous it is, or I have the right to to race in NASCAR or do something. I have the right to to ride a motorcycle, which is extremely dangerous. I have the right to drive. I have the right to drive a Tahoe, which if I were to run a red light, I could easily kill somebody. So I mean, you do have the right to do a lot of things that endanger yourself and arguably other people. Um, so where do we draw that line? I mean, we know, especially knowing that the rate of keeping in mind that the fatality rate of coronavirus is 3%.
Yeah, that's not good though. You do watch some of the same news that your dad and I watch, which is saying that hospitals in a lot of places are becoming overwhelmed. I mean, I'm sorry, but and also fatality isn't the only thing you're going to consider, because they've recently found out that there's mental illness sometimes associated with this, and that the long-term effects are worse than they've thought they would be with a lot of people who get this, that brain fog and dementia, and I mean, even sometimes lung problems for years after. I'm just saying it's not, simple. I'm not going to pronounce, but I'm just saying that I think people in higher office do need to do something. I mean, there are people with no, you know, none of the underlying conditions who just, you know, get ill and die, and they can't even see their family at the end. And it's just, I'm sorry, but I think something needs to be done. I mean, maybe, you know, maybe some of the distinctions are arbitrary of where you draw the line, but I think some line has to be drawn. And you know, I mean, I'm sure that, you know, your people are just going to clobber all over that I think that the president's response has been totally inadequate. So, you know, if you want to uncover me, you did it.
Well, no, I mean, I think we know that you lean pretty far left, and that's okay.
I don't think it's
we're here
far.
to-
I don't think it's far left. I think it's what humanity calls for. Okay. I mean, I think, you know, of course, there's a lot of problems with imposing restrictions, and if you shut me down in a business, I'd be pretty darn upset. But on the other hand, you know, maybe then my business is going to be able to start. But if I'm dead, I'm not going to restart a business, or if my clientele dies. So, you know, I think it's
we
not
kind of
clear.
I think we kind of get also into there though. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Because you could also make the case that, you know, if you lose your livelihood and can no longer afford health insurance, you know, maybe someone in your family dies, or you die because you no longer have access to medical care. That's what I'm saying. People don't like. You may actually end up killing more people by, you know, taking away their livelihood and making it so they no longer have access to medical care, or they're just debt riddled the rest of their life, which causes which, you know, is a very high reason that people commit suicide.
But then
Right.
Jay, you're dealing strictly in hypotheticals, and this is the issue. Talking from the federal level or the national level, of this is why it's dangerous to assign these privileges to. Realistically, where does this fall? Does this fall on the elected officials that run our national government, our state governments, or should this, you know, be something that's decided by the Supreme Courts, or even more radical yet, as Mary mentioned, maybe this should actually be decided by a council of medical professionals?
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to ask Dad, you know, so Dad, being that you've had you know, extensive medical training over a few decades, if you were to advise Governor Cuomo on what course of action to be taken, what would it be?
Splunge.
Do elaborate.
Get somebody smarter than me, because I sure as hell don't know. There's just no right answer.
I mean, I think history shows, you know, as you mentioned before, you know, the 1917, 1918, you know, flu pandemic. The real difference there was that there was census data that allowed them to actually combat and actually quarantine people in that case. And I think we're moving closer to that. You know, as much as I disagree with many things Cuomo's done, I think we're moving closer to that, as I've said before, with the micro data of being able to actually target hotspots, individual neighborhoods where we're actually having outbreaks in New York. Jay, I also want to, not to derail, you need to, by the way, read the comments, and it references something that the good doctor said before.
The only answer is a purge. Well, I think that's it's a shame Maramy Jeeks left, because that's
Jay,
before that one.
If germs were macroscopic, turn the world upside down. Yeah, that's good. We missed. Oh, I need more Cialis to voice max. It's over. I wasn't aware that Cialis did that for your voice. But anyway, hey, actually, while we have Dad on the show, this is actually a serious medical question. If you are 19 years old and you take Cialis, will that have any impact on the deepness of your voice? Serious question, by the way.
Asking for a friend?
Asking for a friend.
J Tahoe, you're 30.
Yeah, I said asking for a friend.
Wink, wink. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't.
Is your brother still on the?
I don't see how, but
Yeah, I would actually like to.
Lloyd is still
I would
on.
actually like to bring my brother onto the show because not that I think he'll have the answer to that question, but he is in a profession that deals with Corona a good amount. So
he's a lot
I mean, I
closer to it
quite
than I
like
am.
his purge idea.
yeah, well, I think that's actually the best answer we've gotten all night.
Urge what?
The purge, it's where we make crime legal for 24 hours, and you're allowed to kill people you don't like, but only for 24 hours. And basically the point of it is it heals society and takes care of excess population. It heals society. I mean, Joe Biden says he's going to heal us soon, so I guess we'll see if that happens. All right. Well, we're going on about an hour and a half here. So, Mom, Dad, any final points you guys would like to make?
No, get on to someone who's a lot closer to this than I am.
Yeah, bring your brother on.
Yeah. I mean, if he wants to come on, here, what I'll do, I will, let's see here. I'm going to send him the link.
I thought he was, since he kept sending them.
Well, he was commenting, but I'm gonna send. I actually just sent him the link on Instagram. Yes, yes. Abe Patel wants to call in, so yeah, you can. Let me. You know what? I will send you the link in Discord, and you can come on the show. I think we'll do one or two more callers, and then we'll call it a night because it is getting late. But yeah, let's. Let me actually post the comment here. I'm gonna post it in the. I won't post it on Discord. I'll post it on here. Okay, we have another. Okay, actually, okay, we have Lloyd. So let's add him to the stream. All right, we've got the whole family on the stream now. Lloyd, welcome to the show.
Yo, man.
All right, so you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your opinion on what we talked about tonight is?
So I'm an oncology nurse, so I'm kind of close to the issue, but not firsthand with COVID patients, but you kind of I hear the murmurings, and if there are overflow, we do get them. But I don't think I don't necessarily disagree with you guys. My only issue with a districting kind of thing is then you would have to test everybody, to be able to really determine which districts are safe and which are not. And as you guys had said, that's not constitutional either.
Which has long been my argument that perhaps the data is completely skewed, because how can you ensure that an accurate sampling of the population is being tested?
I don't think you can, because you think about it, if you're symptomatic, right, you go to an ER and you get tested. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. But if you're not symptomatic, or even if you are symptomatic but not as concerned as you're going to go to a hospital, then if you don't have the means or the insurance or whatever, you might not ever get that drive-through test. So who knows? I do agree with the data. I'm not gonna say I don't disagree with the data, but I'm saying as far as a districting kind of thing would work, I don't know if there's really a way to prove areas are safer or not safer besides just the overall population density of those areas. Of course, if you go to the boonies in Alabama and there's no one within 3 blocks of you, obviously that's safer than New York City. But
we were joking prior to the stream that I have the data here. Let me pull it up. We were trying to figure out, looking at Brown School of Public Health, there is a county in Montana that has a 0% COVID infection rate. We wanted to know what they were doing right out there. So I think you just might have explained that away.
There's probably 5 of them, you know. And they probably haven't left their town. You
Not
know?
even 1 out of 5. It appears that they're effectively quarantining.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's
Top
it's
tier
such a tough.
civilization.
It's such a loaded issue.
But that's long been my argument. You know, I'll say it. You know, if you don't want to say it, Lloyd, I argue against the data. I think the sampling of these tests is completely skewed, and yes, it's adequate for measuring symptomatic COVID cases, as you pointed out, but it doesn't measure asymptomatic cases. It doesn't measure the true population as a whole. And I personally remember earlier in this year, in early 2020, I remember the media and many medical officials recommending that if you felt sick, don't get tested, don't go anywhere, stay home unless it's absolutely critical and you need medical care. And I wonder how many COVID cases were missed in the beginning of the year because people weren't getting tested and they didn't actually know what the symptoms were early on. I speak from personal experience on that matter.
I still think a lot of it. There's still just a lot of gray area. Like, I don't think that we really still have a good grasp of what the symptoms are.
No, I think we'll be studying this for decades to come
because it's a virus, and viruses, it's not very easy to pinpoint a very specific hallmark thing that, you know, sets that aside from something else. Which brings me back to that other thing you guys were talking about with the death rate of that versus the flu. I was actually just talking about this with my dad the other day. I mean, I think that's also kind of hard to pinpoint, like, specifically if someone dies from coronavirus or not, because, like, technically everybody dies of your cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest, but like I think it, like, even you can't necessarily say someone died of COVID or died of influenza, but it's not going to help you. It's definitely going to hurt you.
Yeah. You know what I just noticed too is that our whole family, we always like go every few seconds. Do we all have deviated symptoms?
Probably.
I thought it was a Coke dependency.
I was gonna say, if you're home for Christmas, I'll bring the Christmas Coke.
It's allergies, probably, but
I mean, with me, you can kind of see I have a deviated septum, but I think that's from when a certain person threw a golf ball at my face when I was 12.
It only improved your looks.
I think though, back with this all COVID thing, the other thing I was talking to Mom and Dad about the other day is my biggest concern is considering, I feel like a lot of people have already, just kind of forgotten how serious all of this is. But when a vaccine does come out, before it's proven that, there's any efficacy to that, like, just because people get it, does that mean it's going to work? Like, it's going to take months of research and stuff like that after people get it to really say this is working or not working.
Well,
but, how much are cases going to spike at that point? Because if people think, oh, I have a vaccine, I don't need to, I don't need to keep taking these precautions.
I was going to say,
I've got an airbag. I don't need a seatbelt.
Good luck getting everybody to take that vaccine when you have a significant amount of the population that actually doesn't think that vaccines are helpful, and maybe linked to autism diagnoses. So good luck trying to get that vaccine widespread.
Oh, breaking news, Jay. Darwin just called in. He says it's okay not to take the vax.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
I'll be front and center when they come out with that.
Our next guest is actually commenting that the vaccine is a bad idea. So actually, Lloyd, do you mind if I bring him on now so we can actually discuss that?
I don't speak for, medical professionals, but I can say in my personal opinion, I'm going to say a vaccine is is better than any alternative anyone can offer right now.
Well, I mean, Lloyd, there's only two solutions in that case. It's everybody gets a vaccine and develops herd immunity, or everybody gets corona. I think we know it's probably the better solution out of the two.
I agree, but all right.
All right, let's bring in President Trump. Your
Hey, how's everyone doing
Great to have
tonight? How's everyone doing tonight?
We are great. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's, let's face it. I think we all know deep inside what this is. It's kind of a hoax. It's an excuse for the Great Reset, and but it works, right? It certainly works. And I don't want to talk too much about politics here, but they knew that Corona really was the only thing that was going to take President Trump down in this election, especially after he was exonerated from impeachment and whatnot. So I'm the guy called President Harris from a couple of weeks back, but I gotta say, I was still impressed with the kind of turnout that Trump was able to bring for the Republicans. 72 million votes. I never thought a Republican would get that many votes.
Yeah, if you recall, you and I had debated. You said this was going to be a blowout.
Oh yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, and if you saw the news today, Clark County is not in Nevada. They're not going to certify their results for the down ballot. And then Wayne County in Detroit, which has the left absolutely melting down because they're saying, oh, black voters don't count. Apparently, they're not going to certify their results either. So I think we got to wait a week or two. I think they have until December 8th, right? That's when the electors are certified or whatnot. But I think there's good news that's going to come. But as far as this, the lockdown thing, look, I don't mind wearing a mask, but I think this whole thing is really stupid. I would never take a vaccine. I know a lot of people personally who would never take a vaccine. And, somebody, was it Lloyd, who said, the alternative is, you either all get corona or you all get the vaccine. Look, nobody who's young is getting corona. And even if you do, it's going to be fine. This thing really is a total hoax. But the thing is, these kind of things work because people want a nanny state. They really want a nanny state. They want to stay home. They want to get the stimulus checks. They want more and more spending. It's just so easy.
I most certainly don't stay home, and I can say that this is very real.
Okay, but I mean, a lot of people do. All these people who voted for Biden, they voted for a 6-week lockdown at minimum. All these people who voted for Biden, they keep saying on Twitter and whatnot, they keep saying, "Oh, Trump killed 225,000 people." I mean, what an idiotic statement. But people buy it, right? And and I think right after Election Day, NBC changed their COVID meter over to the stock market for the first time in like nine months. Anytime somebody dies, they say, "Oh, Trump killed him." I mean, give me a break. People who have like 6 or 7 different conditions going on, they die from corona supposedly. They put it into that column. Now Trump's being blamed for it. So nobody really knows how to deal with this thing. But I think the best way is to. I never thought they should have been locked down in the first place. They should have just let this thing go. That's what they should do. And if some people want to wear a mask, go ahead. Cover half of your face.
He does raise a good point, and let me just because I actually do want to dissect this into 2 things that you said there. So first, I wanted to ask Lloyd. President Trump has said that it's not young people dying from corona. Now, other than a few outlier cases, from my observation, that does seem to be true. You don't see, young people die. I do know people who've had it. So in terms of, in terms of the virus itself being a hoax, I would say no, because I've known plenty of people who had it, and sure, it sucked. It was really horrible. It was like a bad flu, and it was miserable for a few days. But, they ultimately recovered and were okay, except for one person I know who had a really bad case and still to this day doesn't have their sense of smell, and they got it in March. But I wanted to ask, Lloyd, being in a hospital, what are you seeing? Are young people coming in with corona being hospitalized?
Well, like I said before, I don't work specifically with COVID patients, so I will keep my opinion to just what I have read and seen in like the news and whatnot. But I think something that people are also neglecting with something like this is it's a respiratory disease, right? And like Dad was talking about earlier, the I can never pronounce it. Virulence, meaning like the strength of the virus and how long it lasts. We don't know these things yet. We know that when someone's negative, right? But there's that whole, do you have antibodies? There are people who are getting these weird cases of pneumonia after it. There are people who are more susceptible to stroke after it. There are so many other things that can kill you other than the virus itself. So maybe young people, aren't as likely to, drop as a 75-year-old, but that's just averages regardless, right?
Right.
That doesn't
Well,
mean it's not.
that's
I
with
think
that's
I
with
think
anything.
if
That's with
you're
anything,
any
but
type of person, even if you don't have comorbidities, you should still be scared, because anything that can add to your risk of dying is probably something you want to avoid.
well, here's the other thing he said. Right, he said that how many people with pre-existing conditions or were elderly who would have died if they had something else, such as the flu. Um, and actually, like, I wanted to ask Dad, if you're still on the show. Hey, Dad, what is the roughly what's the mortality rate from just the regular flu every year? What would be a normal flu mortality rate?
I don't know the rate, but usually it's about 60 to 80,000
60 to 80,000
in the
deaths,
U.S.
right?
Yeah, I get those stats from New York State.
which is in comparison to around 225,000 or so are reported or supposedly reported for COVID.
Right,
Yeah,
but
and
it's
just to
like,
put that into
Yeah,
perspective, we killed our economy. We shut down everything for what, 3 times more people dying supposedly. So I mean, it's really overblown from day one. It was totally overblown. And we have to put this within the bigger picture. This is the Great Reset, right? You're starting to see not just the UN and the media, but also Canada's Prime Minister and whatnot. They're saying, we need this for a Great Reset. And unfortunately, I think there's a side that we have as human beings that's, we always want the easy way. And I'm not accusing anybody of that here, but I'm just saying that I know a lot of people. Just we might die. Great, so let's stay at home for 8 months, maybe even till spring of 2021. Get the checks, and that's life. But we got to keep things within, put things within context and in the bigger picture. And that's what this is all about. This isn't about people's safety and stuff. It really isn't.
right. Well, my point. Can you actually elaborate a little more on what the Great Reset is?
What I know, the Great Reset is it's essentially it's a redistribution of wealth, right? And the whole movement of environmental justice and justice regarding wealth this is an opportunity to accelerate that further. And it can take form, in the form of joining more global, what you call them, global organizations, or things like the Paris Climate Accord and whatnot. Efforts to really, I guess, reduce individualism. Fauci said the other day, what did he say exactly? We are an individualist nation, but now it's time to do the right thing, taking away people's rights, centralizing power, the collective over the individual. That's kind of what it is. I can look into the specifics, but I guess there's some flexibility around how every country adopts it. But if this really, um, it's kind of similar to the whole climate change argument, in that you wonder how many people are really sincere about um, climate levels when they won't criticize any of the countries that have such higher emissions, way higher emissions than America.
Right.
But
No,
they're ready to
I
jump
agree
on
with
and
you there.
regulate and tax and this whole thing, take your rights away, ban dissent, the whole thing. And people are hysterical. Like you don't wear a mask. The other day, Sherrod Brown, who's the senator in Ohio, he started, he was 50 feet away from I don't know what to call it, the guy in the middle of the Senate. And he's like, "Oh, put your mask on." And rightfully, the Republican senator responded, "I don't wear a mask when I'm speaking." But people are hysterical, the president doesn't care about your safety and stuff. No, he's the only thing standing between us and total, just leftist insanity.
Well, what I wanted
So
to ask there, I called out earlier in the show that we say we have to shut down businesses and only allow X number of people in a building at a time, and people have to be ordering a food if they go to a bar, and all these regulations. But then you have millions of people out in the street protesting, millions. We're talking people on top of each other.
Yep.
And
And celebrating the Biden win.
All of a sudden, that's all thrown to the wayside. It's not nobody's enforcing masks. Nobody's enforcing staying 6 feet apart. You got people packed wall to wall, packed building to building across the street, and nobody has anything to say about it. Now all of a sudden, the health's not a concern. If as somebody on the left, how do you account for that?
They don't, because they're hypocrites, right? This is a power grab, because this is what they've always wanted to do. Kind of like when Chuck Schumer said right after Election Day, he's like, "Now we take Georgia and then we change America," right? Look, they want to fundamentally transform America, because this is the only country, really, where you have more individualism than collectivism. Is that we keep losing freedoms as time goes, but it's a power grab. You're not allowed to go to church. You can't go to the synagogue. You can't worship. This and that. It's a big deal. Shut it down. But then you can go out there and dance with a lot of people celebrating Biden's, supposed win. You can go burn businesses down. That's all fine. Mostly peaceful protests. Fauci, Jim Jordan and Rand Paul challenged Fauci, and this little bird brain had nothing to say. He kept saying, "I'm not a politician." He criticizes Trump for the super spreader event, supposedly, but he won't criticize those protests and then burning things down and looting and everything. So it's always a power grab. And call me skeptic, call me whatever. It's always a power grab.
And you raised a good point there. So, Mom, Dad, Lloyd, I did want to ask, being that you guys you guys are slightly more to the left of the center. How do you account? How is it a super spreader event when Trump has a rally, but it's not a super spreader event when you have a million people side to side in the streets protesting? I do want to hear your answer to that.
Well, I mean, of course you're right about that. They shouldn't be doing it either. Nobody should be doing it under any circumstances. I mean,
yeah, they both are. The only difference is that one is advertised and invited, and the other one was, albeit stupid, it was spontaneous.
Right, but if you're gonna enforce one under the reason that it's for the health and safety of everybody, you have to enforce the other.
Right. You didn't see me out
otherwise
there
it's
rioting
just
or protesting.
Otherwise, it's just
supporting Joe
hypocrisy.
Biden.
Otherwise, it's just blatant hypocrisy, right?
I would go so far as saying that it's not blatant hypocrisy. It's simply polarization by the media, and really, frankly, manipulation of the facts. It's. I don't think anybody thinks that mass gatherings are a great idea amongst a global pandemic, but I think that there's a certain level of polarization and a certain level of political agenda in the way that things are being framed. Obviously, we're in a very politically
charged,
volatile time, and being amongst a pandemic only further intensifies those concerns and those anxieties. I would go probably so far as agreeing with some of the other guests that this has certainly further divided people. But on the other hand, there has to be some way out of this. This is not the new normal.
Well, the rules have to be the same. The rules have to be the same no matter what the circumstances.
Yeah,
are.
I think we
You're
keep
not
going
allowed-
back. I think all roads lead back to this same conversation. So I know you were
But
somewhat
you know,
against
I'll
what
say
I
one
was
thing.
saying, but
Hold on.
why not totally
don't
shut
talk over
down
each other.
all
Let-
businesses and
let
organizations
Dan-
with the same restrictions? I think the real issue that everybody has is that the rules seem to be applied arbitrarily.
Yeah, President, you have a response.
Yeah, so what I gotta say is, yeah, we all know there's polarization and everything, but it's all coming from the left. This isn't The right is not forcing the left into their lifestyle, into their worldview. It's always the left going after. They are all about control, shutting down your business, destroying your livelihood, getting you on a welfare program, stopping you from worshiping this and that. Taking freedom of speech away, controlling the schools through unions, and then you got the colleges, total cultural Marxist on there. And as far as the hypocrisy, look, the hypocrisy is because they want control, right? So do you really think, like, for example, you can talk about, again, the climate change analogy. These celebrities who are always telling people, don't build coal plants, don't do this, don't do that. But then you see them flying in these expensive airplanes
Yeah.
with the
You
mansions
have
and everything.
what's her name? Greta Thunberg
Yeah,
lecturing everyone on climate change as she flies around on her private jet.
or
Yeah.
Leo DiCaprio, or any of them. And you just saw a story about Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. He was at a party apparently, and then he apologized for it. I'm surprised he even apologized. But the point is, this is a power grab. They really don't. I don't think they care very sincerely. That they aren't out there shivering like, oh God, we really wouldn't want anybody to die. No, they probably don't. They don't care that much. But what they do care about is control. This is the last. This is like the last step in the victory for the left. They've been winning the cultural war for the last 60 years, and now this is the last step. Shut down the churches. Justice Alito the other day said religious liberty is under attack in many of these areas. And you know what? All the Democratic senators like Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, and whatnot. You know what they said? They started attacking him. They're like, this is a politically charged speech. What he said was religious liberty is under attack. So the left is stopping people from going to church and worshiping. And he gets attacked from the Democratic senators for pointing that out. And they're calling that a politically charged statement. So, of course, it's a power grab. The polarization is coming from them because they're trying to take over our lives. We are not trying to do that to them. Well, maybe we should, but I'm just saying, that's where all of it is coming from. The way to end polarization is through, I think it's called federalism, or maybe the opposite, where you just allow every state to have its own approach, which Trump kind of allowed them to do, right? Don't centralize power, decentralize it. But of course, the left doesn't like that because they want to expand government, take over control. They are the ones attacking our liberties. So if they stop doing that, people wouldn't be so polarized. But they won't, because that's their Marxist ideology.
Okay. Mom, Dad, do you have any response to that? I mean, that was a pretty that statement had a lot of conviction behind it. Do you guys have a response to that?
Oh, Mom was out of the room, and I kind of zoned out. Give me a 10-word summary.
Well, I guess. Well, Jay, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say it was your statement. So you
Okay.
This is the very succinct version.
So what I said was the polarization is because the left is trying to take liberties away and they're trying to force people into their lifestyle, and so that's where the hypocrisy is coming from, because this is a power grab. Things like attacking on businesses, destroying people's livelihoods, and taking their ability away to worship. It's not that they're really sincerely caring about people's lives. It's more of a power grab. It's just another thing
It's
in their
about compliance,
plan.
not safety. Yeah, Dad, what do you think about that?
I think a lot of it is just common sense. I mean, I don't really go with the conspiracy of the left. I mean, you can take people who are a little left of the center in their political views, but I think they're like doctors. I always say you get 10 doctors in the room, you get 11 opinions. there's as many opinions as there are individuals.
And I'd be willing to say, as a moderate, that I think, as I said, this is a very politically and culturally volatile time in our history. I would say that moral equivalency has been lifted really from the left and from the right. One of the things that disturbs me, kind of sitting in the middle at times, is seeing that both sides feel somewhat that I'm righter than you because this is the right way, and because this is my way of life, and you're gonna die on that hill. This is again.
If you're a conservative, just delete me now.
So can I ask you why you think it's polarized, though? Can I ask you why you think it's polarized?
So
I think personally that in today's the way that we consume media today, with the internet and with the way that we consume our news and our information, and that we develop our opinions, I personally think that we're over socialized, and we're actually marketed to, we're catered to in a way that whether you're left or right of center, you tend to live in somewhat of an echo chamber where you hear the same opinions and ideals over and over again until you feel that they're right.
Hey Dan, did you watch that movie, The Social Dilemma, that documentary?
I did not. No, I did not. I've been
So
meaning
they
to.
actually had former VPs from big tech companies, who didn't name which company. Some of them named, but some others didn't name which company they worked for, because I guess they didn't want to be like doxxed or whatever. But they said that they were developed. That one guy was working on a way to build an algorithm that sends you article. If you're on the left, right, it gathers information to find out that you lean to the left of center, and you see articles that are increasingly radically left, and it does the same thing for people on the right. So if you're on the right, you're actually not getting the counterpoints. You are getting. That's exactly what you're getting.
It's why I refuse to mark my political affiliations on any of my social media profiles, is because then they market to you, they pander to you, and you know what? It's part of the mechanism. It's part of the click mechanism and the society that the instant gratification society that we live in. At the end of the day, it feels good to be right, and they want you to feel good. And I'm sorry to tell you, but the answer probably lies somewhere in the middle of the far left and the far right opinions.
Yeah, well, I've been saying this for a long time.
Nobody's trying.
That's what makes this COVID issue so loaded too, is that there are no right answers. So of course it's going to be very polarizing, because it's hard to say anyone is more right than someone else, because there's not a lot of information.
As I said, the moral equivalency has been removed, and that's the first step in creating further volatility. And I think Jay made a comment in terms of how this kind of drives consumerism.
I only see it on the left. I'll be honest. It's not even about left versus right at this point. Like, this is really, it's like, do you want freedom? Do you care about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Or do you want to hand power over to people who hate America fundamentally and who want to transform it? So that's what this is really about. This isn't even about.
Pretty polarizing. I'm just saying what you just.
Sure,
said.
I mean, because it's the reality. Sadly,
that's not the.
I'm gonna tell you.
How is it not the reality? How is it not the reality?
Wait. Let Noodle let them finish. Let them finish.
I mean,
okay. President
How is
Hugo,
what I said not the reality?
How is that not the reality?
Yeah, how is that?
Like, if you, it's just not a good argument. Like, if we have to limit some of those things for safety, but of course you're going to think that's polarizing because you don't think it's an actual issue, because you don't see it.
No, look, COVID is what I see is, look, even if it's a real thing, okay, sure, let's say it's a real thing. They're using that, okay? They're using that, and just like they use everything else, cancel culture, attacks on free speech, big tech censorship, You know, the taking the social issues of transgenders and LGBTQ to an extreme where it's like now if you refuse to teach or support it, not only will they dox you, not only will they come after your kids, they want to teach them that things that should not be taught. It's just another political opportunity. There really isn't any conspiracy behind what I'm saying here. If there is, you can feel free to point it out. But it's not like I woke up in the middle of the night. I was like, oh my God, they're coming for our guns. It's like it's very real. It's
Well, I
why
mean,
it's why
cancel
it's why
culture is definitely
Hispanics.
real.
Sorry.
Cancel culture is very real. I mean, you're right about that. You say the wrong thing now, even if it's not that bad, and it's over for you, buddy.
Know the people who refused to certify the result in Wayne County, Antifa right now is trying to dox them. The lawyers who are working on Trump's campaign team, they were doxed, and they're getting threats now. So that's just one thing. But what about teaching some of these, taking the culture war to an extreme where they're teaching kids in schools things that they shouldn't be taught when it comes to, exploring sexuality and stuff like that. So they're coming for us. We aren't coming for them. That's where the polarization is coming from. Because if it was just about, tax rates or, social security, it wouldn't be so polarized. But now you're trying to take people's rights away. That's what the left is doing.
Okay, Lloyd, you go now.
I mean, that just sounds like polarizing. Like you sound angry when you say that. Like the reality, like I said before, is these limitations and things that are being done. We probably wouldn't be in this situation where we have to close all these things. Maybe if we did some of these things earlier, but we didn't because we had a president who neglected it. Oh yes, he did close the borders or whatever. He did a good job. I don't think that was really, as big of a deal as he makes it out to be. But then he puts Mike Pence
Well,
as the head of that task
he
force.
closed the western borders, but unfortunately, the big infection came to this country from Europe, from the east.
And
Right.
yeah, we should
there
have
was,
those. We should have those Mike Pence values. Where, mind you, this is the guy heading the coronavirus task force. The guy who won't be in another room with women unless his wife is in the room. Those are the
And
values.
what's wrong with that?
Teaching. Those are the values we should be teaching our kids, right? Like,
no, see, that's his choice. See, the left came after him because they're like, oh, it's so backward and
because
everything. That's his personal choice.
fucking weird. That's like
It's not. Look, it's weird to you, but if it's not weird to somebody else, why you gotta shove it down their throats?
Wait. We're gonna not have a shouting match. So again, everybody gets, you get 2 minutes, and he gets 2 minutes. So Lloyd, finish your point, and then President, you can jump in and rebuttal.
my point isn't even that that's weird. My point is that is the guy who is heading the task force on the virus, the thing that is killing people. Like that he what did he know? We discounted Fauci, someone who had been the head of infectious disease, had battled countless epidemics in the past, AIDS, you name it. He was the guy at the front of that. And then we burned him. We defunded the WHO. We defunded the CDC. We did all these things that
We didn't defund the CDC, by the way. That's false. That's a false statement.
Polarizing, whatever.
So here's a fact check.
Can we get while they're making the argument, Dan, can you find data on that? Was the CDC defunded?
The CDC has you can take it to the bank. It hasn't been defunded. The WHO has been defunded for good reason.
Right. He's right. I meant to just say the WHO. I should not.
And that's a good thing because the WHO, like much of these organizations, covers up for the worst people in the world, the Iranian regime, China in this case. But as far as Fauci is really a hypocrite bird brain, this guy. So look, you coming after Mike Pence. The left hates Mike Pence because he's a Christian. They hate people who practice their faith in a way where they're just publicly practicing their faith, right? They just want to be in a room with another woman. Okay, what's the big idea? What's the problem with that? He's somebody who's not pro-abortion.
Because that's
Oh, let's
weird.
come
That
after.
doesn't make any sense.
It
Why would
doesn't
he
make any
not?
sense to you because you're part of the faithless generation,
Well, here's
and
the
so
thing.
am I.
Regardless, let me hold on. Let me moderate here. Regardless, I agree. It is weird. However, again, it doesn't matter. That doesn't discredit his ability to decision make. It's just a thing that that you perceive as weird, but it doesn't really affect his ability to govern. But yeah, moving on.
But that's not my point. Regardless, he's the vice president. He's a politician. He should not have been the person heading the coronavirus task force.
So who should have?
Dr.
medical
Fauci, or
professional.
You know what Fauci did?
somebody
Fauci
who's
said
a
this wasn't a big
doctor,
deal, and he said masks
somebody
don't
who's
help.
a doctor who acknowledges that it's real.
Yeah, so you know what
Fauci did say that in the beginning. Fauci did say that the masks weren't really a big deal.
Yeah, and he
Well,
also said this whole thing is not a big deal.
information changes. It was a
Right.
new virus.
So look,
you don't
if it
know.
was up to the doctors and the scientists, we'd all be shut in a room alone till 2022, 2024. So we need to have business people and common sense people. And they were allowed, man. They were up there. That bird brain was up there every day and talking. So what's her name? Deborah Wells? She was also up there too.
Yeah, but they didn't. They weren't in charge of the task for the.
They shouldn't be because they would take our rights
people-
away even more than they did now.
The real reason Fauci shouldn't be in charge, though, we all know, is because he's a manlet. But anyway,
Yeah, I'm Fauci's height, and I gotta admit
when
when I
in charge of handling issues that related to infectious disease in the past, I think he did a pretty good job with HIV and AIDS. I think he did a pretty good job with Ebola.
Yeah, so whenever you allow scientists and doctors to take charge, and they should not be in charge of public decision making, they should just be able to recommend, all right? Is they will take your rights away and they will be hypocrites because these guys are secular people, right? They really are leftists, most of them. So they will come after all the people on the right, be it if you're religious, if you have conservative values, whatever, they'll come right after you. They hate dissent. That's the thing that really pisses these guys off. They hate dissent. So God forbid a scientist or a doctor says, "Hey, you know what? It's not helpful." They'll if it were up to these guys, they would have them silenced in the most brutal ways because that's what the Marxist ideology is all about. It isn't about science. Science is about debate. Science is about hypothesis. It's about a scientific process. They hate that. They want centralized control. And that's why whenever Rand Paul, for example, search it up, Rand Paul versus Fauci. Rand Paul points out how different models of handling the virus, different approaches could be better or not. And this guy's like, no, you don't know. It's not all about that. It's about sharing that. They hate dissent. So we shouldn't be putting these people in charge. Or you could, perhaps come up with like a cabinet or a council, whatever, and they could give recommendations, different approaches. But they hate dissent. So that's what it's really about.
So I don't think I've asked you this question. Is at the end of the day, this decision talking about what Jay really likes to get back to is the constitutionality of these restrictions that are applied during this pandemic. Who do you really think should have the final say? Should it be our elected officials? Should it be our Supreme Court justices who are not elected but are appointed on a political level at some point? Or should it be our medical professionals? Or do you have yet a fourth option? What is the right answer of who should make these decisions on what should be made?
You should be, so they should give your first off, the elected representatives are number one, and what they should do is allow everybody to make their best individual choice, and then we allow that, and we compare different models and approaches. I don't know between elected representatives and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, obviously being the highest court in the land, I guess what they are able to do, for example, if Biden puts in a mask mandate and he puts it in through an executive order, I don't know if he needs to put it in through an executive order, they can strike it down. But other than that, I think it's the elected representatives, and they should allow everybody to make their own personal decision instead of this power grab.
So in that case, if you're strongly siding on the federalist argument that the state should be able to decide what they want to do, and that what the state decides is what's right for the citizens in that state, that you'd be citing on the fact that what Andrew Cuomo is doing in New York is right.
It's better than allowing Andrew Cuomo, if he was president, over the entire country. So yeah, I think that, obviously we should trust everybody
But then
within there.
you are going to have governors in that scenario. You are going to have governors who basically become mini dictators.
You will,
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, but that's why people vote with their feet, right? That's why people when they're leaving. How many people left New York City? 250,000 over this pandemic. I was reading this article, but it's like people vote with their feet then, but at least you can compare, right? It's like one approach versus another. California versus Texas, New York versus Indiana, for example. But I mean, look, the sad reality is, yeah, we do have Democrats, unfortunately, and they will want to take power, and they want to take control. But it's better than having 350 million people, their lives being controlled by one guy at the top. So I want this power to be as decentralized as possible. Unfortunately, the left has power in many areas, more populist, so they're gonna do things. But I mean, the alternative is we give them control of the whole country.
Well, majority rules, and just in breaking news, just now, Wayne County did certify their election results.
So what they did is it was a certification contingent upon an audit by the Michigan Secretary of State's office. I just saw that. Yeah, so let's see what happens. I think, I heard Sidney Powell, who's on the legal team, she was General Mike Flynn's lawyer. She's really hopeful. She says we have a lot of evidence and this and that. But Trump and his legal team need to really get going and present that stuff now. Because if they don't present it now, all these rallies and all this talk is no good. We got to do it now.
So I will say this: I don't think Trump is going to be able to prove anything widespread enough to really overturn the result. I certainly didn't. I knew this wasn't going to be a blowout. I mean, some states were by less than 1% margin. Unfortunately, except for Maine and Nebraska, that's every state is winner take all. So even if Biden wins by 0.5%, that's a win's a win, then he gets those electoral votes. But it's my point being is, like, I don't think you're going to be able to prove. I don't think Trump is going to. I'm sure there was definitely some some fraud. I mean, I believe in Pennsylvania they found like 6,000 fraudulent ballots. But in the face of what would he need, like an extra 100,000? He would need to prove like almost 100,000 votes to win the state.
Yeah, well, here's their course of action. Number one, they want to, through litigation and through the irregularities, they want them to not certify the results, and then it goes to, I think, a House contingent election, right? And then the Republicans win that. Or the other thing is, this is hard, but Rudy Giuliani said they're going to make it so that all the votes where the Republican observers were not allowed, insufficient numbers, which are roughly 600,000 in Pennsylvania, 300,000 in Michigan, those would not count. But it's hard for the court to say those won't count. But let's see what happens. That's strategy number two.
I don't think any judge is going to uphold that.
Right, but let's see. And then the third is with the recanvassing, and I actually am expecting something, because some of these glitches, like the one in that county in Michigan where 6,000 votes for Trump were given to Biden, and then when they fixed the glitch, they went over to Trump. I think when they do it by hand and they do signature verification, which they're not doing in Georgia right now because those spineless Republicans won't do their job. If they did signature verification, and if they they count the ballots by hand, I expect something there. Combined. So, and then after that, let's see what happens with the ballots. But I think, look, Georgia and Arizona need to go to Trump, and then he needs one of Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin. But if all he has to do is just get them to not certify the results, because if they don't certify the results, then the legislatures, I think they can step in, or it goes to the House contingent election. And in that one, the Republicans win, because it's not by the actual representatives in the House. By the way, we did much better than I was expecting in the House. Like, we are pretty close to taking the majority in 2022. But if it goes to the House continuing election, it's red state versus blue state. And I think in that one, we win like 31 or 35-21 or something like that.
Right. Because there
Yeah.
are actually more red states than there are blue states. The only reason that Democrats, a chief reason that Democrats win a lot of election by electoral votes is because New York has 29 and California has 55. So
Yeah. Well, remember, and then what I expect, if that happens, first of all, that's great news. But I think the left is going to lose it because they're going to go, remember they were talking about abolishing the Electoral College after 2016, and they found that one loophole within the Constitution where they can do it without abolishing the Electoral College. Well, now this is gonna trigger some hardcore movements because the left, look, they got hammered in this election. In the House, they suffered. There were 27 seats that were labeled as toss-ups. The Republicans won all 27. Trump won more of the Hispanic vote than he did in 2016. He made great inroads in especially a couple of counties. The Hispanics carried Trump in Texas. All that talk of Texas going to blue, the Republicans won all 10 House seats there. So the left is really frustrated. So I think
a lot of that doesn't surprise me. We have a large Hispanic population here in New York, and Hispanics are typically very conservative.
And I'm I gotta say what's gonna happen is the left. First off, they're gonna burn and they're gonna riot as they typically do. That's within their ideology. But then the movement is gonna be, you know what? I know this sounds a little bit over the top right now, but to secede, because they're gonna be like, look, we can't win because of the Constitution. They're probably going to start burning the Constitution because the left, they burn the American flag, but that's probably going to be a new thing that they start doing. And then you're going to see them just totally give up on the idea of America, which means they want the blue states to secede. That's going to be the new thing on the left now because they can't win elections, at least for the next 50 years. They're waiting for the boomers to die and everything because they know the next generation is pretty, they're not religious and whatnot, but they want things now. And so to do that, they want to secede, and you're going to see them push for these things, constitutional amendments and whatnot. They got hammered in this election pretty badly, and I was really happy.
Well, you're forgetting one thing, though.
What is that?
Go.
In October, the U.S. Census closed, so by 2022, there will be complete redistricting of the U.S., and the whole rules on gerrymandering are also out the door. There are bipartisan commissions now, so I think the districting is going to be a lot more representative of the overall population.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hey guys, when we are going on 2 hours and 15 minutes here, so I think we should go around, let everybody make their final points, and kind of start wrapping this stream up. I thought this was a really good stream, and we got some really points from both sides. So why don't we go?
Can I go first, and then I'll be out?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I just gotta say thanks for having me on, and always remember what President Reagan said, right? That quote about freedom is never more than one generation away. We're never more than one generation away from losing our freedoms. That's what this is about. If you want to wear a mask, if you want to protect yourself, go ahead. But recognize that the left is out there to take your rights away. And they're there to push this ideology, their agenda down your throats and down your kids' throats. And unfortunately, they've been allowed to do that for the last 6 years. They're winning the culture war in schools and college campuses through the media and everything. This is the last stand if we want to survive as a republic. And so keep that in mind. Don't get caught up in this virus. This whole thing really is so overblown. It's ridiculous with the mortality rate and everything. So just keep that in mind, and be ready. I mean, I think we're going to see some exciting political action. I really hope they refuse to certify the results. I want to see Trump for 4 more years. Hopefully, we win both the seats in Georgia. We keep the Senate, and hopefully we get one more Supreme Court justice, because I'd like to see a 7-2 majority. But yeah, that's it. Good night.
All right, President Trump, thank you for your call. All right, Lloyd, we'll go to you next. try to wrap this one up. Okay, so what are your final thoughts?
No real final thoughts here. Yeah, nothing much. I don't think we're really trying to force an agenda down your throat. I don't speak for the entire, left or whatever, right, or whatever you want to call it. But, we're not shoving things down your throat. But, if you don't wear a mask and you don't socially distance, they'll probably be sticking a tube down your throat to breathe for you. So I'll leave it with that.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show and giving us, your observations from the front lines, even though we know you're not on the COVID floor, but always valuable insight. All right, Dad. What are Mom and Dad? What are your takeaways, final thoughts on our stream tonight?
Your mom's in her office, but I think it's funny how a discussion of the constitutionality of quarantining just morphed into a political battle. And my final thought is I don't know whether the virus is Republican or Democrat. It might be independent.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that it doesn't support a political party either.
And I do just want to say I give my props to Dr. Fauci. I mean, he did graduate number one in his class from Columbia, and you probably haven't looked at my bookshelf, but he is the current editor of the gold standard textbook for internal medicine. He's the current editor.
What is the gold standard textbook for internal medicine?
Harrison's.
I think I have seen that on your bookshelf.
All 2,400 pages of it.
Right. All right. Well, Dad, thanks for hopping on the show. Definitely some great insight there. And you guys have a good night.
Well, I'm glad we solved the problems of the world.
Yeah, or wasted 2 hours for people, either or. But but all right. Have a good night.
Night all.
All right, and that brings us to Dan the Man. All right, man. Let's land this plane and bring this bad boy home.
Absolutely. So I think there was a lot to unpack, and this was definitely a fun-filled stream for sure. I'm definitely going to have to agree with some of the previous comments that were made. And, I think it goes further to prove that we are very much divided in terms of political opinion. But I always tell people, don't let that discourage you from voicing your personal opinion and your ideas, left or right or center, because without this type of discourse and discussion,
and discord,
that is really, and discord, this is really what America's made of, is that we're able to still do this. And I know there's lots of talk about censorship and doxing, and we're going to get taken down by the man, but we're living proof that we have greater freedom of speech and freedoms than ever before. The question is, to what ends? To what ends do our freedoms become detrimental to our own health and to others? And I think with this whole pandemic going on, everybody has to do what they think is right, and take into regard that, look, we don't want this to be the new normal. This is not the new normal. We will get back to life someday. This too will pass, but we have to be responsible. And I think we need to listen to more responsible people. Maybe we don't need to listen to the talking heads in our living rooms, on the television. Maybe we don't necessarily, we haven't made the best decisions in terms of the people that we've elected to positions of power when they're taking $25,000 pay increases while our state goes deeper and deeper into deficit. And maybe, just maybe, the left and the right and the center, we all have much more in common. And we should pull together and put our heads together on this issue, because I think there's a lot of intelligent people, a lot of good people on both sides. And we're going to get through this. The question of constitutionality, that'll be decided by the highest court in the land. And the question from there is where the federal powers choose to take this, and where the science shows where these COVID cases continue to flare up. But I think this is something that we're going to be studying for the rest of our lives. We are living history.
Yeah, well, the chapter about 2020 in the history books is going to be that's going to be the ones that the kids want to skip school that day for, well, that week or that month. But yeah, I think I agree, man. And I'm gonna make my my final thoughts, and then we are going to be out of here. So we're almost at 2.5 hours. But yeah, I thought we had a good stream tonight. Both sides made some really good points. My opinion is ultimately that it would be unconstitutional to impose a lockdown. Now, I think that I would urge for people to be responsible. I mean, it's really not that hard to wear a mask. We've all been doing it for months. I mean, it's really, at the end of the day, it's not that much of a whether the government can or can't tell you to do it. I think it becomes you morally and responsibly, right? You should. Is it really that, unless you really have a problem with breathing, it's really not that big of a deal to wear a mask. Now, I ultimately think that the government, it will be found unconstitutional for the governor to tell you, how many people you can have on private property in your home, what time your business has to close, how many people you can have in a crowd, as long as they're remaining lawful and peaceful. So yeah, I think that's where we're at. But I would say for people, let's also not poke the bear, right? We also don't need to be having unnecessary gatherings. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I did find it a little hypocritical that there were all those restrictions, but that went out the window that the moment we were having protests, and the protests were justified, by the way. I'm not saying before I get branded as a racist and you're insensitive to those issues, I do think that the protests were right. There absolutely should have been protesting over the death of George Floyd. I'm just saying, if you're going to enforce a lockdown, you're going to enforce social distancing, you have to do it no matter what the case is, whether it's to prevent a pandemic and you don't allow, people, to be within 6 feet of each other inside of a bar. You can't have people on top of each other in the streets. It doesn't work like that. You have to enforce both. So ultimately, I do think it is unconstitutional, and that if people, while maybe it's not good for them, they are within their rights to have as many people as they want in their house, as long as it is FDA compliant, right, and isn't a fire hazard, because then it's not peaceful anymore. But yeah, you can't. The government, I don't believe, has the right to tell you that. It's the people have to take responsibility for themselves, and if we want to stop the pandemic, people are going to have to willfully make that choice. It can't come from the government telling you, well, you have to. And those are my final thoughts. Thank you guys so much. I think we really crushed it tonight. In my opinion, this has been one of my favorite streams so far. Thanks to everybody who came on, gave their opinion, everybody who commented, and I will see you guys for our next fabulous podcast. Good night, everyone.